那今天晚上的 hosting 呢，是我们 IvyCompass，我们的 IvyCompass 的中文叫指南针教育咨询。那我们这样的一个机构呢，是致力于将北美口碑最好的前藤校招生官，还有独立的升学顾问，以及他们所需要的在升学过程当中，高中期间4年所需要帮助孩子能够更强的增强他们的这个各个背景的提升的内容，包括音乐方面的，包括艺术方面的，还有包括 academic 技术方面的，大方说 economic 或者是其他的科研以及竞赛等等资源对接给我们华人的家庭。那这些资源呢，都是通过我们非常认真的筛选和确保他们的工作质量，来让我们的华人能够在需要的时候能够找到合适的机构和合适的资源来帮助他们的孩子更加的 strong。那 IvyCompass 呢，因为我们有 AFI 这个平台，我们还会提供一些非常好的志愿者的机会，以及一些社会影响力、科研等等背景提升的项目。像我刚刚举的这些例子，那我们的宗旨呢，想跟大家分享的是，我们不仅仅停留在升学方面，我们当然希望我们孩子去一个他们能够有能力去到的一个学校，但同时实际上在这个过程当中，我们用这样的一个杠杆儿撬动了，让孩子们能够更好的去知道怎么 managing up、managing cross 和 managing down。也就是说，孩子知道怎么样跟一些比他年长的一些导师们，利用好他们的资源，让自己更加的强大和更加的成熟。也就是说，通过我们这些导师的培养，那我们是可以欣喜的看到，有导师辅导的孩子在高中毕业的时候，他们显然是更加成熟的，是更加能够掌握好去大学的这样的一个完全独立的环境当中的，去利用好身边的资源，让自己更加的有价值。那今年我们的录取，大家所比较熟悉的这些学校都有我们孩子的身影哈，我们学生的身影，所以我就不一一赘述了。那么如果您还没有了解到我们这个指南针，欢迎您上我们的网站 www.ivycompass.com，我们有过去非常多的每一期的背景提升，以及各个不同独立升学顾问还有前招生官的一些分享。孩子的成长的上限就是我们家长的认知，当我们的家长的 knowledge 更加的丰厚，更加的 sophisticated，更加的有这个丰富的这个认知和更加大的格局，我相信孩子这个土壤的成长就会更加健康。所以我特别鼓励，不管你们家孩子现在是小学、初中还是高中，您都应该去多听一听这方面的这个讲座和分享，因为这些老师们会告诉你们和告诉家长们一些可能你日常生活当中和过程当中不可以或者没有机会接触到的一些资源，这样的话呢，会扩宽我们的思路。那么孩子的成长和跟您交流沟通的过程当中，您就会更好的跟他们有一些健康的对话。我们的网站上面还有一些大家看到的这些升学顾问资源，每个导师因为他们的是这个经历不同，这个工作年限不同，所以他们的价位也是不一样的。所以您不要担心，如果这个不符合咱们家的这个 budget，您就望而却止，不需要。你可以跟我们我跟 Allison 或者其他的团员来沟通，我们会跟你讲哪个导师的价位是不一样的啊，每个导师的这个背景，他们这个由于工作的这个时间和精力不一样，价位都是不一样的，所以各个价位的都有哈，我们不应该因为价位的这个跟我们的不符而停止寻找这样的一个帮助，真的是可以帮助了孩子非常好的在这个高中期间找到自己的方向和知道怎么把时间很好的利用。那今天晚上呢，我们是非常的高兴哈，这个也很荣幸通过 Henry，我也大概介绍一下 Henry 的背景。Henry 呢是我们这个就是怎么说呢，同行当中的一位非常优秀的佼佼者，一位young 这个 professional。那这个 young professional，首先 Henry 自己本身是哈佛毕业的他是哈佛毕业的。那在哈佛毕业的这个情况下，他自己在高中期间，我可以跟大家分享他是怎么样用他的这个背景，除了学习成绩 GPA 很高以外，他自己本身在高中期间就投入到很多的这个政治和 volunteer 的一些活动当中，他帮助我们 New Jersey，在这个 young below age 21或 below 18也有这个能力去选举，做一些这个政治上的一些voice 的这个发声，所以他自己现在也是致力于在工作之余，把他的时间放在很多业余的。对我们亚裔，特别是男生，特别是 male 这个孩子的这个健康成长当中，因为他自己的成长环境经历了这些，来让他知道我们的确存在着一些亚裔的孩子， 特别是男性的孩子是需要一些特殊的关爱的啊。那个家长是有的时候是不一定有这样的一个背景和 knowledge 去知道怎么样让我们亚裔的孩子，特别是男孩儿，更加的能够有一些比较除了学习以外的一些情感上的一些自信啊。他们在步入工作岗位上面能够表现出来的这种自信和自如，在这个 social connection 方面。那今天晚上呢，Dr. Way 呢会通过今天晚上的分享，首先 Dr. Way 呢他是纽约大学发展心理学的教授，他同时也在中美青少年情感这个发展领域有过40年的研究经验。包括现在也在上海，有很多的这个 study，等一会儿他跟我们分享哈。他的研究成果曾被《纽约时报》和《纽约客》等等 ABC 媒体广泛的报道啊。他也出了好几本书，今天晚上也会跟大家分享。那他今天晚上的主要的这个 focus 呢，是在我们华裔的男性的青春期所遇到的关系断联的等问题，造成他们可能会影响到学习和正常的社会连接。然后他也会跟我们分享。家长是可以如何来表达，帮助华裔孩子来表达情感，建立真诚的人际关系，以及怎么样练习积极倾听与沟通手段，让孩子感受到被理解。当一个人他感受到了被理解和被看见，那么他的心理是安定的，是健康的。那么学习上面很多时候就是迎刃而解了。所以我们不要光盯学习，而是要反过来关心这个人，把这个人关心好了，有的时候这个学习就迎刃而解了。那么今天晚上这个时间我就交给 Henry 跟这个 Dr. Way。Now, Niobe, Dr. Way, I am finished my introduction.
Good.
Now the floor is yours. It's such a pleasure. Thank you for your time.
Well, thank you so much, and thank you for the introduction. Do I go next, Henry, or should you go? Okay.
Yeah, I'll share my screen now.
Okay, thanks. Actually, yeah, why don't you share the first slide and then I'll begin, but you're going to stay at that first slide for a while because I'm going to give a little history of who I am.
Okay.
Welcome, everybody. I'm so pleased to have you here. I'm so pleased to have been welcomed by Henry and Sophia. This is a very important event for me for a lot of different reasons, and I'll explain in my own history why this is such an important moment for me to be talking about my findings with this particular audience. I was born in Paris, France, and raised around the world. I grew up in different cultures around the world, including in Nanjing, China in the 1980s. My father was a professor of comparative literature at Nanda University for 8 years in Nanjing. At the time, he was the only non-Chinese professor at Nanda who was in that department. And I lived with him for a while and grew to love certainly Nanjing, but also China at the time. And my father was also fluent in Mandarin and in reading classical and modern Chinese. And so he raised me with knowing the Chinese tradition in literature and philosophy and the arts. And his mission really in his life, which shaped me, was to bring to the West an understanding of the contributions of Chinese history, both philosophy, literature, and the arts, into the Western conversation. And he spent his entire career trying to do that. He died about 3 years ago, but he spent his entire career doing that. So I was raised on knowing Chinese history from a very little girl. When in the 80s, after I spent time in Nanjing, I ended up going to graduate school, and I'm now going to tell you a little bit about how I got to the research topic I'm looking at, and then I'm going to present some findings, and Henry's going to elaborate on his own findings after I'm done. So in the 80s, I became interested in human development. Because I had been raised in different cultures, I was very interested in human development in cultural context. So how cultures shaped our development as humans. My father said to me when I was 18 years old, and I said I was very interested in teenagers. I was a teenager myself. He said, if you want to understand yourself, he said, if you want to understand American teenagers, we lived in the United States at that time. If you want to understand American teenagers, you should go live in China. And what he meant is that you can't understand yourself if you just see yourself. You have to understand, in order to understand yourself, you have to see teenagers or people that are different from yourself. So today I'm going to present research both in the American context of what I've learned from young people. I've been doing studies of social emotional development of young people. By young people, I mean teenagers and young adults. since 1987, so a very, very long time. And I've been doing a study of 1,200 Chinese families since 2005. So we're about to do our 20-year follow-up. We have 2 cohorts, which you can ask questions about if you're interested. We started with the baby cohort in 2005, and they're now 20. And we started with the teenage sample in 2005 in Nanjing, and they're now 30. And we started a project in Nanjing in 2005 because I had been in Nanjing in the 1980s, and Nanjing holds a very, very special place in my heart. It represents my father and the ambitions of my father, which is very dear and meaningful to me. So the research has focused on social emotional development. And how I came to boys and young men, which I'm going to talk about today, I'm going to focus on today, is that I was listening to boys. I was a Harvard graduate student in the 1980s. I was a doctoral student in human development and psychology at Harvard University. And part of our training was that we had to go into high schools and listen to the experiences of high school students in the Boston public schools. And in those schools, I started to hear a theme among boys and young men about their desire for friendships, their struggles to find friendships, and very much wanting these close, intimate friendships with other boys. And I was struck by the fact that we weren't talking about those friendships, and we still are not, by the way, but we certainly weren't at the time. We weren't talking about the need for friendships among boys, and certainly we weren't talking about the need for friendships among, in my case in Boston, Asian American boys, African American boys, Latino boys, white, European American boys, all boys, a cross-cultural context within Boston. And then gradually, when we did research in Nanjing, we found the same thing in Nanjing, China, talked about an expression of wanting these close friendships. So by the time I became a professor, I then did a postdoctoral fellowship at Yale University and started to understand more deeply about the experience of being not just a boy, but a girl. And then when I came to NYU in 1995, I began to do studies, federally funded research studies on social emotional development, specifically all over the cities, including in Chinatown, including in the Lower East Side, including on the Upper West Side, including up the Upper East Side. So lots of different populations of young people. And I was curious, particularly with the boys and young men and their friendships and what they would tell me. And these are studies that are very, very large. So in Nanjing, where our sample is 1,200 families, so that's many, many teenagers, about 700 teenagers. From the American sample that I'll focus on today, but I can answer questions about how they're connected, the 2 studies. But I'm going to focus a lot on the American sample. But the American sample is a lot of Chinese American youth from the Lower East Side and Chinatown. So it includes Chinese American boys as well. And I'm going to focus on those. And those are both very, very large samples. And I just have to say one more thing, Henry, before you switch the slide. I'm a developmental psychologist. I'm not a clinical psychologist. And what it means to be a developmental psychologist is I study the same kids over time. So we'll start when they're in 8th grade, 7th grade, and then we'll follow the same children over time, 8th, 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th, right? So that my findings today will focus on what boys what boys sound like when they're in 7th and 8th and 9th grade, and how they change what they sound like as they get older. And I'll talk about that as we get there. Okay, so now we're ready I'm going to present my findings from my research over the past, really it's been over the past 40 years. You're getting the findings from over 40 years of research with thousands and thousands of young people. Okay, I've written books about these findings. Deep Secrets was a book that got a lot of attention. I'll talk about it. A lot of the findings I talk about in this, including with the Chinese American boys, are in this book. And so if you want to actually read a book that represents what I'm going to talk about today, this is it. I have very happy news, which I told Henry already. A very well-known Chinese publisher in China bought the rights from Harvard. It's published by Harvard University Press. So it will be coming out in Chinese in about 1 year. And so you can read it in Chinese, which is great, in about a year. Okay, next slide. I also wrote a book. It's a co-edited book called The Crisis of Connection. It's very much what we learned from boys and young men. And I won't really talk about that today, but I just wanted you to see that I've written about boys, but also about the larger crisis of connection you see among not only boys, but also girls too. Okay, next slide. This is my most recent book, Rebels with a Cause, Reimagining Boys, Ourselves, and Our Culture. And by our culture, I mean our modern culture. So that includes China, it includes the United States. It's thinking about how in modernity, we have lost our way. We have lost our way in our modern culture. And that's what Boys and Young Men teach us. So I'll talk about this book, but if you want more recent work, you can turn to this book. Okay, next slide. This is a documentary film that was made based on my work called The Mask You Live In. It's made by the first partner, the governor of California's wife made this film. It's shown in high schools across the country. It's a very powerful film talking about what boys and young men are suffering from. Next slide. This was an Oscar-nominated movie based on my book, Deep Secrets. And it's a Belgian film, and it was Oscar nominated for the best foreign film, and you can watch it on Amazon Prime. Okay, now I'm going to get to the findings, Henry. Oh, my current book that I'm writing right this minute as we speak is for Harvard University Press again, and the book is called Our Social Nature in an Antisocial Culture, a 5-part story. And what you're going to hear today is I'm very much arguing that our modern culture is actually an antisocial culture. And modernity has turned into, in countries like China, certainly, but also the United States and around the world, and promoting a very antisocial message. And that's in large part why boys and young men are suffering. Okay, next slide. Okay, so I've already explained this, but I wanted to make sure you understood it. I'm drawing from both my mixed method and longitudinal research in US and China, and longitudinal, just for people who don't know what that means, it just means we follow the same children over time. So each year we're asking them the same questions to look at their changes. Okay, go ahead. So there are 4 patterns in the data, and this is 40 years of data. So it's a lot of data to try to summarize in a short talk, but I'm going to condense it to 4 major themes. And I want to make it very, very clear to you that these are themes that I hear in the Nanjing data and I hear in the American data. I hear it in the Chinese American boys, and I hear it in the African American boys, and I hear it in the European American boys. So I'm hearing it across all different cultures. This is not something that's specific to a specific culture. You hear it everywhere. We now do studies in all over the world, including in India. Okay, so the first theme is, you're going to hear it in the boys' narratives, in their stories, in their interviews, but I'm going to summarize here. So the first one is the desire for deep secret friendships. EA means early adolescence. So we heard this particularly when they were 12, 13, 14. They talk explicitly about their desire for deep secret friendships. And I'll tell you exactly what that means in a moment. The second theme we heard, which was a this may be our most important theme, especially for parents. If you're a parent, this is the most important theme, I think, is that boys directly link having quality friendships with other boys. They link it to their mental health. They say things that you'll hear in a second. If I don't have these friendships, I would feel lonely. I might want to kill myself. I would feel all alone. They directly link it to their mental health. So we have to, as a country, as the United States, but also around the world, have to understand that friendships are critical for our mental health. And when we struggle with our friendships, our mental health suffers, not the other way around. It's not a mental health crisis. It really is a friendship crisis that boys and young men are facing. Okay, including Chinese American and Chinese boys. Okay, the third theme is a crisis of connection. I'll talk about what that means. As boys get older, they start to experience a crisis of connection. I'll go over that. The next theme is how cultural ideologies, I'll tell you exactly what I mean by cultural ideologies. I don't mean American. I mean cultural ideologies, the notions of being a modern culture. Is an ideology about what modernity means, leads to a crisis of connection. And to summarize, to make it very clear for the audience, what I'm going to focus on when I say cultural ideologies is the focus on the me that is pervasive, not only in the United States, but is growing that had become very, very common in China as well. The focus on the individual, on individual success, and the movement away from a more relational or community-oriented ideology in the name of modernity. So we'll talk about that in a second from the data. Boys teach us this, how cultural ideologies get in the way of their capacity to do well in life. Okay, now you're going to hear, before you switch, Henry, let me tell the audience, I'm now going to quote from a lot of boys. You're going to read the quote with me as I read it, and I'm showing you the themes in the quotes, okay? So each of these themes I'll give quotes for, and so you can hear the language. Some of the boys are Chinese American, some are European American, some are African American, and some, I don't think any of the quotes are from the Chinese boys, but some of them are from the Chinese American boys. Okay, first slide. Next slide. So deep secret friendships was the #1 theme. And this is a typical quote from a 14-year-old boy across many, many, many teenagers of all cultures. When you ask boys about 13 or 14 about their best friendships, these are the kinds of responses I have now heard for almost 40 years. I want to repeat that. I've heard these themes for almost 40 years from hundreds of boys. My best friend and I love each other. That's it. You have this thing that is deep, so deep it's within you, you can't explain it. It's just a thing that you know that person is that person. And that is all that should be important in our friendship. I guess in life, sometimes two people can really, really understand each other and really have a trust, respect, and love for each other. It just happens. It's human nature. And I want to, before we go on to the next quote, I'm going to spend a little bit of time on this quote. I want you to pay attention not only to what this young man is saying, but also the language that he's using, the way in which he describes it. It just happens. It's human nature. Boys get that the desire for close, intimate friendships with other boys is just human nature. It's just part of our nature. It's not a weird thing. It's not a strange thing. It's just part of our human nature. And so what I call their relational intelligence is very deep and profound. When we listen to boys, we realize that they're just as relationally intelligent as everybody else. Okay, next slide. These are from different boys. I'm not cherry picking. It's called cherry picking your data. I'm not picking certain slides. I'm representing different boys. Each quote is a different boy from different cultures, different perspectives, but they're all saying the same thing. When asked about his two friends, his best friends, another boy says, he's about 14 years old in this one. I've got two best friends, Willie and Brian. Like sometimes when me and Willie argue, me and Brian are real close. Then when me and Brian are not doing so good, me and Willie are real close. It's like circles of love. Sometimes we're all close. Another boy says, my ideal best friend is a close, close friend who I could say anything to. Because sometimes you need to spill your heart out to somebody. And if there's nobody there, then you're going to keep it inside. Then you will have anger. So you need somebody to talk to always. And I want to emphasize, this is what I call relational intelligence, linking the sharing of not sharing feelings with keeping it inside, and then you will have anger. Boys are very, very relationally intelligent. They get that they need to express their feelings or they will experience anger if they don't, as you know, as he said, if they keep it inside. Okay, next slide. This is still the first theme. Remember I said there was the one theme that was about deep secret friendships. It's all quotes under the first theme. My best friend could just tell me anything and I could tell him anything. Like I always know everything about him. We always chill. Like we don't hide secrets from each other. We tell each other our problems. Next, another boy. If I'm having problems at home, they'll like counsel me. I just trust them with anything, like deep secrets, anything. Another boy. It's like a bond. We keep secrets. Like there's something that's important to me, like I could tell him and he won't go and make fun of it. Like if my family is having problems or something. And this is a key theme in the boys' stories. And again, this is when they're 13, 14, and 15. The key theme in here is being able to share things and not being laughed at. That's one of the worst things boys do to each other, is they turn everything into a joke. And then even with my son, I have a son who's 24. I heard him when he was younger, and even now, where he reveals something to his friends and then they turn it into a joke. Boys don't want that. They say they don't mind it, but they don't want it. They want to be able to share things with their close friend and not be laughed at. Okay, next one. When asked about why friendships are important, same theme, but a different question. When asked why are friendships important, another boy says, yeah, because my best friend is like a second person you could speak to. It's like, see how the kids carry a little teddy bear or whatever, and when they cry, they'll hold it and stuff. So when like you get upset or something, you just walk over to your closest friends and they'll loosen up, whatever. They'll be like, yeah, it's all right, even though it's not. Right? So that emotional intelligence, knowing that people cover over their feelings and pretend it's okay. Okay, next slide. Okay, I think this is the final one for the first theme. When asked about the importance of his friends, he says, I mean, I can like joke around with my friends who are not close. And like, if I'm like having trouble in my classes, like if somebody knows the subject better than me, like I'll ask them, like, yeah, it's pretty much like that. Not too deep though. I wouldn't tell them like my too secretive things, not too secretive, like about a girl or something. I mean, that's the deepest, nothing deeper than that. With my best friends, I would tell my deepest secrets. And deepest secrets for boys across cultural context. I'm going to tell you this because this is true in China and this is true in the United States. Deepest secrets is always about family. That's the ones that they are wanting to share with a close friend, and they're struggling to find those friendships in which they can talk about their family because they don't want to talk about their family to their family. So it's not about other things in their lives. It's almost always, deepest secrets are almost always about the family. Okay, next slide. Okay, the second theme, and this will go a little faster, Henry will, it's not so detailed in this one. Friendships and mental health. Boys directly linked friendships with their mental health, and these are 4 separate boys. You need friends to talk to sometimes, like you have nobody to talk to, you don't have a friend, it's hard. You got to keep things bottled up inside. You might just start crying or whatever. Another boy said, someone to talk to, like you have problems with something, you go talk to him. If you keep it all to yourself, you go crazy, try to take it out on someone else. Another boy says, without friends, you will go crazy or mad, or you'll be lonely all the time, be depressed. You would go wacko. My friendships are important because you need a friend, or else you'd be depressed. You won't be happy. You'd try to kill yourself, because then you'd be all alone and no one to talk to. And I want to say this to all the parents in the room. I have heard this theme for almost 40 years, and we're simply not listening. As parents, we are not listening to this message. And so I've been hearing this from hundreds and hundreds of boys for many, many decades, and we're really not listening to it. They're telling us that they want these friendships, and that's the most important thing for their mental health. Okay, next slide. Victor's, in this case, I'll tell you because it's relevant, he's Chinese American. If you don't have friends, no, you got no one to talk secrets to. The interviewer says, so what happens then? Victor said, then it's like you need to keep all the secrets to yourself. The interviewer says, what do you think it'd be like if you didn't have someone? Victor says, then it's like I always think bad stuff in my brain because like no one's helping me and I just need to keep all the secrets to myself. Okay, next slide. Okay, the third theme, how are we doing on time, Henry? Oh, we're doing okay, actually. We're doing okay. Okay, good. The third theme is the crisis of connection. Now, this theme is very important because this is what Henry will also talk about in his presentation. The crisis of connection is as boys got older. Remember, we followed the same boys over time, right? So, if Henry was in the study, we'd follow him in 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th grade. So as the same boys that said, I love him, I can't live without him, those kinds of quotes earlier in adolescence, by middle to late adolescence, they're starting to sound different. They start to sound like stereotypic boys, and they start to express, they're experiencing a crisis of connection, which is they're finding it more difficult to find the friendships that they want. As they get older, they have difficulty finding the friendships that they want. Okay, do you have a closer best friend this year? And this year means their junior or senior year. So the same boy that you heard earlier who talked about it's human nature to have closeness says this. This is 3 years later. Like my friendship with my best friend is fading, but I'm saying it's still there. But so I mean, it's still there because we still do stuff together, but only once in a while. It's sad because he lives only 1 block away from me, and I get to do stuff with him less than I get to do stuff with people who are way further. So it's like a DJ used his crossfader and started fading it slowly and slowly. And now I'm like halfway through the crossfade. And even if you don't know what a crossfade is, it doesn't matter. You get the image that it's disappearing. He feels like his friendships are disappearing as he gets older. Another boy said, we used to be close when referring to earlier friendships, as far as always being around each other. It's just we're apart, like as far as like if I need them, they'll still be there. If they need me, I'll be there. But as far as like always being together, we're not as close as we were before. Okay, next slide. Okay, do you have a closer best friend this year? And again, this is the same children over time. By middle or to late adolescence, this is what they sounded like. Not really. I think myself, the friend I had, I lost it. That was the only person I could trust, and we talked about everything. When I was down, he used to help me feel better, the same I did to him. So I feel pretty lonely and sometimes depressed because I think it will never be the same, you know. I think that when you have a real friend and you lost it, I don't think you'll find another one like him. I tried to look for a person, you know, but it's not that easy. Again, I have been hearing that theme for almost 40 years from boys, you know, across cultures, in a Chinese context, in an American context. Do you have a closer best friend this year? No, I don't say I do, because I feel that a friend is going to be there for you, and he'll support you whether they're good and bad times. You can share with him, you could share your feelings with him, your true feelings. That's why I don't think I have any real close friends anymore. I hate it, because I wouldn't mind talking to somebody my age that I can relate to them on a different basis. Okay, next slide. Okay, this is a more complicated, and this is the final theme. The question you should be asking yourself is, why do boys start to lose their friendships? Why do they start to struggle and oftentimes lead, you know, enter into young adulthood feeling isolated and lonely? And I have to say another statistic. Right at the age in which they talk about the loss of friendships is right when the suicide rate among boys goes up dramatically. So at 15 or 16, the suicide rate goes up dramatically among boys. Right when they tell us about their struggle with friendships, the suicide rates go up. The other thing that happens is that all the mass shooters that you've heard about in the news, almost all the mass shooters are between the ages of 16 to 25. So it's exactly the age period in which boys and young men struggle the most with friendships that you see suicide and violence. Okay, and that's an important finding. So linking the lack of friendships and finding these close friendships with actually, you know, depression as well as possibly suicide, and the most extreme cases, violence. So the reason you're finding this loss, and you hear it in their stories, it has to do with both a Chinese context and an American context. I'm going to say this very clearly to parents. We define maturity and manhood along notions of being self-sufficient, not expressing your feelings, being stoic, right? Not being emotional. So yes, is there variation in China? Certainly. Is there variation in the United States? Certainly. There's always variation in these patterns. But for the most part, what boys tell us is that they feel pressure to man up, you know, as they get older. So they start to go underground with their feelings about wanting friendships, but they also feel pressure to mature in a modern culture that defines maturity around being self-sufficient, rather than being self-sufficient is important, obviously, autonomous is important, but also being deeply connected to other people, to their peers, as well as to their parents, should be part of our definition of maturity. So you hear it in their quotes. These are quotes. I don't need to express my feelings anymore. I am mature. I am a man. So he literally equates not expressing feelings with being mature and being a man. So the problem is a cultural ideology that equates maturity and manhood with not expressing feelings, right? That's going to cause trouble for everybody, but particularly for boys and men, because it's about being a man. It might be nice to be a girl because then you wouldn't have to be emotionless. I have heard that kind of statement from boys around the world. It is ridiculous that we are now in a culture that thinks feelings, that gives a gender identity to feelings. We've made feelings gendered, right? We've gendered it feminine, and we've made thinking masculine. That is a world that is a modern world that's very disconnected from who we are as humans. Okay, and a final one, no homo. Me and my friends hang out still, but no homo, which basically means I'm not gay, but I still stay out with my friends. So this is the interesting thing. I want to say this very clearly to parents so you understand the theme here. Boys did not say that response when they were 12, 13, 14. They didn't equate sexuality with the human desire for friendships. They didn't do it. As they get older and the pressures to man up intensify, they start to equate wanting close friendships with sexuality. That's a problem. Because for many boys who are straight, who are not gay, it makes them appear gay if they want friendships. That's a problem. And while it used to be mostly a problem in the United States, it is now a problem in China, and I have data on that. Right, that we think wanting close friendships for boys is so-called gay, and it's not. It's human. It's human to want friendships. That's what boys have been teaching me for a long time. Okay, next slide. Okay, so what we learn about the crisis of connection. Remember, the title of my talk was "The Crisis of Connection: Its Roots, Consequences, and Solutions." So I'm going to tell you the findings, summarize the findings for you. What we learn from boys and young men is the crisis of connection, the roots of the crisis. And by crisis of connection, let me define that, Henry, actually, for a second. The crisis of connection is a disconnection from yourself, from what you want most, right? What you need and want, and a disconnection from others. So we hear boys' crisis of connection. They disconnect from their own desire for friendship, and they disconnect from their feelings, right? So they're disconnecting from themselves and others. That's what I call a crisis of connection. So it's to the self and to others. Disconnect from their feelings and disconnect from others in terms of wanting friendships in the name of maturity and manhood. So the roots of the crisis are an antisocial culture, and this is why I call it antisocial. I will tell you exactly. We, and in this case, the we, I want to make sure I'm being very clear at this. The we is people living in modern society. It's now all around the world, in China, in Asia and Europe, in North America, it's all South America, it's everywhere. It's a culture a modern culture that privileges human qualities that are deemed masculine over those deemed feminine. So we privilege thinking over feeling, autonomy over relationships, independence over interdependence, and intellectual over interpersonal curiosity. And I'll talk about that. Now, since I know the history of China and I know the history of Confucius thought, and I know a lot about Chinese philosophical and literature history, that is new to China, this privileging of the so-called masculine over the feminine. There's a long history, as all of you know, most likely, of valuing both the hard and the soft, the yin and the yang, in modern, in society. You have a whole history of it, of valuing both the hard and the soft, the yin yang in society. What has happened with a sort of American infusion into cultures around the world is this privileging of the yang over the yin, and making it essentially a culture that doesn't value the yin or the soft side or the feeling side. And that causes a problem for everybody, but particularly for boys, because remember, it's linked to manhood. So in order to show your soft side means you're not a man, right? And to want emotional closeness and friendships is not manly. So that's an important thing to remember. So we value what's deemed masculine over what's deemed feminine, not what is masculine over what is feminine. It's what we've associated with the stereotype of masculine versus feminine. It's not gender, it's human. Thinking and feeling is human, it's not a gender. Okay, the consequences of the crisis of connection is depression, anxiety, loneliness, substance use, suicide, and violence. I've written lots about that. You can see my data in which I talk about how the consequences of the crisis. The solution is to create a pro-social culture. Henry and I are trying to do that now. that nourishes our nature and our needs rather than gets in the way, valuing the yin and the yang, valuing both sides of our humanity to be a whole human being. And we have to value it and nurture it in our boys and as well as our girls. And we have to create a pro-social culture that values the hard and the soft sides of ourselves and not just the hard sides of ourselves. Okay, next slide. We wrote a piece. I'll start talking about curiosity a lot. For those of you who are interested in my empirical pieces in research journals, I wrote a piece with my doctoral student called Interpersonal Curiosity, a Missing Construct in the Field of Human Development. Interpersonal curiosity, which is the curiosity we naturally have, we're born with it, in other people, isn't even a topic in my field of developmental psychology because we feminized the value. And because we feminize it, we don't value it. But this is the crux, the essential ingredient, the essential ingredient to connection, human connection. Without curiosity, you cannot have connection. So I make that case in this research article. Okay, next piece. Okay, the last tenure, I'm going to go for about another 2 minutes, and then Henry's going to talk. The last 10 years, we've been doing a project in New York City public schools, in the Lower East Side, in Chinatown, and all over the city, where we come in and we built a curriculum to foster what I call relational intelligence, so that children can better have friendships, right? Better have friendships. So that, go to the next slide, Henry. So our Listening with Curiosity project, funded by the Spencer Foundation, has been funded by lots of foundations around the country. I also teach it at NYU, by the way, is designed to address the crisis of connection among young people. It's classroom-based. It's 26 lessons in classrooms. We integrate it into English and humanities classes in New York City schools. We've been doing it for about a decade. And we find in our research evaluating it that it enhances social and emotional skills and well-being. It challenges negative stereotypes. And Henry, you're going to ask me questions about stereotypes, and I'll talk about how it challenges negative stereotypes. A lot of boys, including Chinese American boys and Chinese boys definitely as well, struggle with being stereotyped in a negative way. And the method challenges those stereotypes, so it makes it more possible for them to make close friendships, helps build meaningful friendships, enhances a sense of a common humanity across different cultural groups, and increases academic engagement and writing skills. And I can talk about how it does that if there are questions about it. Okay, next one. The Listening Project, the Listening with Curiosity project, as I just said, is an empirically based 26-lesson curriculum implemented in middle and high school classrooms and as a course, as a full semester course at universities. We've done workshops around the world. Henry's mother just participated in one of my workshops. It was such a joy to have her there. She was one of the best students in the class, and she was trained in the framework and the method. I'm hoping to get her to help me train other people because she was really fantastic. We also created a documentary. We're making a documentary film about the Listening with Curiosity project that'll come out next year. And the most exciting news is we have interest in China, in Guangdong and Shanghai, particularly in Guangdong, in schools to bring the Listening with Curiosity project into China within certain school districts, because they're very interested in this notion of listening with curiosity to help mental health problems, because it fosters social health, which is the predictor of mental health. And we're also in the middle of creating a training institute that will train teachers and professionals around the world in our framework and in our method. So we're doing lots of things to sort of build out what we've learned from boys and young men. And I think that might be it. Is there another one?
Yeah, just the.
Oh, just the final one. Yeah. So we are also in the middle of going back. Yeah, go. Yeah. We are in the midst of creating the first app, AI-driven app. We're building it with 20 teenagers. Many of them are actually Chinese American. 20 teenagers between the ages of 11 to 19. It's an app that uses my method of listening with curiosity. We gamify it. For those parents who don't know what that means, we've just turned it into a game rather than just a curriculum. and that it seeks to bridge divides and builds friendships using our method of transformative interviewing method that I just spoke about, the listening with curiosity, that empirically is proven to, awkwardly phrased, Henry, on the slide. Sorry about that. Empirically proven to enhance relational intelligence. And so what we're doing, which is very new in the world of AI, and so this is all of you who are interested in AI, we're using AI to build human-to-human connection rather than simply human-to-AI connection, which isn't real connection because it's to a robot. But we're trying to use AI to actually build human-to-human connection with Agape Teens, and Melinda Gates from the Gates Foundation is funding us. Okay, finally, this is our Think and Do tank that Henry's been part of for many years now, called the Project for the Advancement of Our Common Humanity. And everything I presented today, I'm the founder of this Think and Do tank. And I presented the work within the context of this Think and Do tank. And I thank you for listening. I think I'm at the, yeah, good. Thank you for listening. And I'm going to turn it over to you, Henry.
Abby, could you actually give like a high level kind of summary of the transformative interviewing method and what that means?
Yeah. So basically what we do is what we're doing in the transformative interviewing practice is we're teaching, there's 9 in my Rebels with a Cause book, it lays out the method and it lays out the practices that I'm referring to. So in the Listening with Curiosity curriculum, which is transformative interviewing, it's the same thing. We're teaching 9 practices of listening with curiosity that have been shown to actually allow someone to see the other and how they understand themselves rather than how they're stereotyped to be. So it really is it's a way to understand someone's experiences, someone's thoughts and feelings in a way that gives them the opportunity to speak about it in an in-depth way, Henry, so that they can be seen as they see themselves. And oftentimes what happens, Henry, and I really want to have a conversation about this when you're done, is that the reason we stereotype each other, you know what the answer is, Henry? Why we stereotype each other so much? We do.
Yes.
Because we're not asking questions. We don't ask questions. Okay. So Henry, I look at you and you look, Asian American or whatever it is, and then I assume I know what you think and feel. And the reality is that most people feel stereotyped, Henry. Most people feel stereotyped. They feel like people do not see them for who they are. But once you start asking questions and saying, so Henry, what do you think about this? And what do you value? And what do you want in life? And why do you want friendships? I start to see you outside of a set of stereotypes about being Chinese American or whatever your identity is. So the idea is that we're not asking questions of each other. We're not engaging in interpersonal curiosity, and we're being lazy. I'm going to say that. It sounds a little harsh, but we're being lazy by assuming that by our stereotypes of each other, we understand each other. We don't. We only understand each other if we ask questions and ask particular follow-up questions to really get at someone's meaning making. And if you're interested in the 9 practices I'm referring to, we can send them the chapter from Rebels so they could look at the 9 practices if they're interested. Okay.
Great. Awesome. Let me share my screen again. Okay. Great. Thanks so much, Niobe, for that very holistic overview of all of your research and your background. I wanted to follow up from that and share some of my specific learnings in my interviews with ABC Chinese American young men that I did when I was a master's student with Niobe 2 years ago. So just an overview of my project. So I conducted, much like Niobe did, these very long, in-depth 1-hour interviews with 12 Chinese American males, like the ABC males, who are college students. But most of my questions were geared towards understanding their high school experiences. And the interviews I did were focused on 2 main themes. One was personal development, so kind of their key experiences in their childhood and their going into adulthood, their family dynamics, friendships, cultural influences, and major life transitions. And the second theme was specifically around masculinity and kind of the American culture of how men are perceived and sort of their expectations. And you'll see on the right some questions I asked, such as what kinds of friendships were most meaningful to you during your teenage years, and how has being Chinese American shaped how you think about masculinity. Before I go ahead, I think I wanted to just give a little bit of why I was so interested in Niobe's work and why I wanted to do this project. I think so many of those quotes that you heard in Niobe's presentation resonated or were those same thoughts that I had, where I really noticed that like the friendships I had, the connections that I had were very strong when I was, early on in my teenage years, 10, 11, 12. And those things really disappeared as I grew older. And I also felt the pressure of being kind of in, New Jersey, in a suburb, in a very competitive high school, being a Chinese American, that there were certain expectations and pressures from society to quote unquote man up. And that meant for me, some of those things where I couldn't really show a lot of my emotions, where the conversations that I had could not be super, deep, that, I had to just focus on the work and the tasks, right? And I think this whole other side of myself, I really wanted an avenue and a channel to express, and I didn't really have that. And so I think it was just really something I've been searching for, and I'm really glad coming to this research and kind of be going through this method and this understanding of, yes, it's actually more normal to, have a full side of yourself, to show your emotions, to really listen and understand people. And yeah, I'm really happy that I went through that process. And the reason I'm wanting so passionate to do this talk, is to make sure that the high school students, the middle school students, college students, kind of right now hear that, connection and building meaningful friendships and having deep emotional conversations is very much a part of being a man and very much part of kind of growing as an adult. So, and those types of skills are even more important, I would say, as you get into kind of the working world. So yeah, I know that was long, but I really wanted to give that message to everyone. So
thank you, Henry, for making my sort of findings real in your life. And I just wanted to throw out there, Henry, that the suicide rate among Chinese American boys is very, very high.
Yeah.
And so this is a really urgent message. If people didn't know that, it's very, very high comparison to other groups of boys. So, and go ahead, Henry, I didn't want to interrupt you.
Yeah. And I think it's a conversation that needs to be had, and whether it's about suicide, but even just in mental health conditions or challenges, I think it's something that, we should have more conversations about and understand, different solutions and different avenues, such as this one, where we can give kind of the voice of Chinese American boys. So I'll go and share some of my findings. I had my mom support me on translating some of these themes. And so there's the Chinese text. So to go for some of my key findings, the first one, and I do really think this is the most important one and relates to Niobe's work, is this desire to build richer connections. If you really sit down and talk and interview these boys, this is the number one thing that they'll bring up is whether it's within the family, but also with their friends, wanting to have those deeper connections and conversations, wanting to be more open about, their emotions, both good and bad, experiences, both good and bad, but not really having that common vocabulary or knowing the common vocabulary. And I would say having the environment or space for them to truly kind of express themselves. And I'll say something within probably the Chinese household is that many of these conversations, and I think this concept of like showing love and kindness and respect, like maybe was shown in a way where the conversations kind of felt a little bit more top down or task oriented. um, you know, did you do well in school? Did you, succeed in this project or this extracurricular? And that's very important. Those are not conversations that should not be had. I think really looking at the fuller picture of like how, asking those how and why questions, which is part of Niobe's, interview method. Like, how did you feel during this experience? Why was this friendship or this experience you had on the weekend so important to you? I think that is very, very critical and something that I wish I had more of, both, I guess, in the household and outside, with my peers. And you'll see some of those interviews from the ABC boys I talked to, that they know that it's okay actually for boys to cry, and that they it's important to like have that outlet, and not just act like a robot, right? And really having that space to prioritize emotional stability, right? And the reason I bring this quote up is like, this is what it means to have that fuller human kind of experience when you're growing up as a teenager, right? That it's both about, hey, are you doing well in school, but how are your emotions? How are you feeling? How are you navigating through this process?
Yeah.
The second finding, and I think all these relate, is that they want to have these spaces for that they can build who they truly are, and that they can find confidence, right? And take ownership of a space. And this doesn't have to be just like in sports, but a lot of the boys I interviewed, summer camp was a very important space for them. Debate teams, other after school activities, theater, right, where they could kind of gain the confidence and find a way to express themselves. And that first quote on the right, you'll see, like summer camp was the ability where this is a space that they could have social confidence, that they could actually be loud. And I think this was really powerful, like have a voice. And it was something that was theirs, right? Maybe parents influenced them to, or encourage them to try this camp or to go to this extracurricular, but they found a way to navigate kind of that space on their own. And I think this relates a lot to Niobe's research, is that they found that group of friends that they could connect with, that were supportive both in the task itself, maybe the sport or the theater, but also having that emotional community and that emotional network, and allowing them to connect more deeply. And that second quote where it says, I felt like their EQ is very high. I've gotten to know these people on a deeper level. I think that's one avenue where if you really get to know them, that they will find something that they feel like is that space that they can build their own self. And then I think having healthy challenges, and finding that opportunity to build kind of life skills, but also the values within those skills, such as discipline, empathy, perseverance, was another big takeaway that I had from all these spaces. This one I think is something that I didn't fully expect when I started these interviews, but almost all of the boys that I interviewed did associate kind of manhood and masculinity with physical attractiveness or physical appearance, and that they wanted to feel proud and comfortable in their bodies. And this was something that they talked about, was, hey, maybe I might not be the strongest or the most tallest or the most athletic, but I want to, have something that I can be proud of, that I can define as being strong, or as being attractive. And that first quote, I like this one, I'll read, like, I feel a special connection to Asian American men who are, and like trying to feel confident in our bodies, because I think people don't always see it. Well, every man deserves to think of themselves as sexy. It's been a struggle with myself that way, and I want all Asian American men to be able to think of themselves that way. And it was certain, like, this topic, I think I really related to, because especially going into teenager years, like I saw it too, where I was no longer like the fastest, I was no longer the strongest. I still play like a lot of sports and value that, but I started to notice that, and it was not something like I really knew how to talk about, and so I think this was something that I think we need to, support boys on this journey to find, who they are and be confident with their sort of manhood and masculine identity.
Yeah.
And the last thing I'll say, this very strong desire for role models, and people that they could relate to that maybe looked like them or had similar experiences. For me, I'll bring up two. One was my high school soccer coach, who I built a really strong relationship with, and was able to kind of go in before school and talk about things that sometimes I wouldn't even be comfortable talking to my own family about. Just, challenges with not just like necessarily in school, but like bigger questions of like, what did I want to do with my life? And having that person, that mentor to go to and role model was really, really important for me. Someone I looked up to was Jeremy Lin too, because obviously like I looked like him and I shared a lot of this joy for sports, and him kind of being a representative of the Asian American man community was something that I didn't really have growing up. And I think my hope is that we have more of these kind of role models, and that our culture kind of actively kind of supports these individuals. And so, those were some key themes. And the last thing I'll share is both in my interviews, and I think this is me also talking personally, kind of going through the ups and downs of being a teenager in the American culture, that we really need to have spaces for boys, especially, and this is in context specifically to ABC, like American Born Chinese, to have these spaces where they can be heard, and to build deep connections. I think getting across this notion, and Niobe's said this kind of in her research as well, that being vulnerable and open is something that boys actually want, and it's a shame really that disappears, and there's pressures against that, and I think this word courageous, is something that I hope we can rethink about. What is it to mean being vulnerable? This concept of that boys want spaces to be unique, stand out, and feel confident for who they are. I think this is true regardless of anybody, but especially in contexts where maybe they don't feel like they're heard, they don't feel like that they can express their full selves. I think this is a message that I really want to get across. I think being a teenager, again, is not always linear upward. There will be ups and downs, and I think it's especially in those down moments where really building strong friendships, having a strong connection, support system, mentors, parents, communities who can really listen and understand what is it that people are going through, and is something that I think we really, really need to strengthen. And this next point, that accomplishment, right? Things that are on paper, does not necessarily define who, an individual's worth, right? In this modern society, we put so much value on those quote unquote, like, markers of success. And I would say in the times where I've actually failed, the times where I've not succeeded is when I've learned the more in many ways about who I am. And I'll say too that like after going through college and starting my career, that this concept of being a full person and having rich experiences and having, life skills, social skills, morals, values, character, like this concept of being a full person that you hear from boys, and that you hear that is what they want, and that they're trying to build these connections and relationships. Those are things that actually become more and more valuable as you leave the purely the academic space, and you go into careers and roles where you're supposed to bring your full self to work, and that those qualities like can actually make you quote unquote more valuable in your company or in your workplace, or in school or wherever. And I think that's something we really should think about and emphasize. And I even want to say too that colleges are valuing more and more. And lastly, I think this is the one message I really want to get across, is this concept of a support network. And this means both in the family, at home, but also outside of home. And as I said, one of the most important people in my life was my high school soccer coach. And so having people that, your teenagers can turn to talk about not just school or not just your extracurricular, but who they are as people, I think is tremendously important. So yeah, I know I might have taken some more time, but hope that was
good. That was fantastic.
Really helpful.
Thank you, Henry.
Yeah, awesome. All right, now I'm just gonna move. I'm gonna pass this actually to my mom, who, as Niobe said, went through Niobe's training and method, and really learned a lot through it. And there's some questions that she had, and then afterwards we can open up to the audience. Oh, are you there?
和田在吗？和田。
Oh, 等一下。
Are you able to speak?
Should I just answer the question?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. Sorry. I wasn't sure whether someone's going to ask that. So stereotypes, when I say earlier in the talk, I talked about an antisocial culture, which doesn't value the social sides of ourselves. It only values the individual, which inherently is antisocial. So an antisocial culture is one that stereotypes people, right? Rather than understanding who they are, just like you just heard that gorgeous presentation by Henry, you stereotype the other person, based on their ethnicity, their race, their gender. And so just like everybody else, Chinese American boys get crushed with stereotypes in so many ways. So if you want to know about one of the things that Chinese American boys suffer with most in public schools and in private schools that I've been in over 40 years, it's being stereotyped. And this is exactly, I'm going to say this very clearly because Henry was so clear. Stereotype to not care about friendships, stereotype to not have emotional skills, stereotype to not be relational intelligence, to not want actually, to not need social and emotional support. And I really have to say, it's so shocking to me as a developmental psychologist that we truly do stereotype Chinese American boys, and I would say Asian boys more generally in the United States in particular, that they don't have the same social emotional needs as girls and women. And that is what's hurting them the most. So these stereotypes that they don't even have social emotional needs. And I'm laughing because it's not that it's funny, it's horrifying. It's horrifying that we do that. And so then we wonder why our boys are suffering. That's why they're suffering, because they have very, very strong social emotional needs. And Sophia, this is for you. And they have very strong, I'm going to use the phrase, and Henry, you can ask me what it means, but relational intelligence. All boys, including Chinese boys and Chinese American boys, we're born with it. Deep relational intelligence. if you watch 4 and 5-year-olds, you see it. They're asking questions about why. They want to know, one little boy said to me the other day, I heard him talking to his mother, and he said, "Mommy, why do you smile when you're feeling sad?" Asking, why are you faking an emotion? That's a 4-year-old boy. Another little 4-year-old boy said, "Mommy, are you yelling at me because your mommy yelled at you?" That's a 4-year-old that understands intergenerational violence. Or yelling, you don't have to call it violence. But I'm just saying the point is that we're born naturally intelligent. So when we assume that boys are not emotional intelligent or don't have emotional or social needs, we're hurting them. We are hurting them. And then they're expressing their hurt. And Henry, that was such a gorgeous presentation because you challenged 100 stereotypes in your presentation. You did exactly what my talk is all about, Henry. It's all about it, right? When you actually listen to Henry and you get to hear not only the experiences of the men in his sample, but you get to hear about Henry's experience, all of a sudden, and I'd like everybody in the audience, if you have a son, I would like them to listen to Henry. Because what Henry does is he normalizes what I know they feel. The boys in my sample normalize it, but Henry is speaking as a Chinese American young man, normalizing what your sons feel. It's very important they feel normal. Okay, that was a long-winded answer to the question, but I hope I answered it.
Awesome, thank you so much. Yeah, Mom, are you there? Can you hear?
Did you talk to her beyond
Yeah.
the Zoom? Is she available, or her sound maybe had issues?
Yeah, maybe the sound.
Yeah, should I go to the next question?
Yeah, you can.
Okay, so this one, what does thriving mean to you, and how can we as parents help our children grow and develop, in addition to emphasizing academic achievement and personal responsibility? Okay, so that's two questions there, really. So first, thriving, I want to talk about survival, not just thriving. How can we help? I'm going to change the question. How can we help our boys survive, right? We certainly want them to thrive, but I want them to survive. I want them to get through their adolescent years and become and grow old. So when I say, how do we help our boys survive, let alone thrive? We have to prioritize. I'm going to say this very slowly because I say this always very slowly to parents. We have to prioritize their social health, their mental health, and their cognitive health, and their physical health. So let's make it 4. Social health, mental health, cognitive health, meaning, a rich intellectual environment, cognitive health, as well as physical health. We're not valuing social health. We value mental health at this point. We value cognitive health. We value physical health. We don't value social health. So if we want our children to survive, we have to value social health, because that's what boys and young men have been asking us that for decades around the world. Value their connections, help them have the connections, help them value when they want to spend time with their friends rather than working another hour on their homework. Figure out a way to allow them to spend time with their friends. They obviously have to do their homework, but figure out how you can accommodate their time so that they get their friendships, right? Their friendships time with their friends. And interestingly enough, in a research, Henry, we find in our research across schools that when you're socially healthy, when you feel better in school, you're more academically engaged and your performance goes up. Because when you feel good about yourself, you think better. Your cognition works better. When you feel like you're a worthy person who's deeply liked by other people, you think better. So that your performance, your academic performance, your math score goes up to those. And I'll tell you an interesting finding. When they've done these experiments that when you're sitting next to a best friend who you're close with, or a brother or a sister who adores you, you actually perform better on a math test than when you're sitting next to a stranger or someone who doesn't like you. Isn't that incredible? We're such social animals that if we're next to someone who loves us, we actually perform better. So think about what that means for your child, right? So that in fact, social health is critical for their academic achievement. Okay, so how do parents help? I would say, actually, Henry gave a lot of suggestions, which I think are very helpful. The idea of summer camps, having opportunities, taking not just like I did, I'm sure many of you have, my children went to, my son took an astrophysics course at Harvard when he was a high school student. That's not really the kind of opportunity Henry's talking about. I mean, he loved the course, but Henry, you know exactly what I'm talking about. It's not the summer course that then helps him get into Harvard. It's the summer camp in which they can play games and connect and have fun at. And it's not about getting into college. And we have to stop that because we're hurting our children when we do that. They can go to their summer camp for Harvard if they want to, but I want you to have them in summer camp where it's just about play, especially when they're younger. But even when they're older, they're learning skills. They're learning how to fish, or they're learning how to row a boat, or they're learning things that are fun to do with other kids. So I would also say as parents, this is the big message I have. This is the big one I have. I want you to replace judgment with curiosity. I want you starting today, I want it to start today, that you look at your child with curiosity rather than with judgment. And I speak as a mother who judged my children all the way through their childhood. I was asking, the only question I would ask my children, Henry, I'm going to fess up, these are the two questions I asked my daughter for 4 years in high school. Did you do your homework? How well did you do on the test? Those are the only two questions I asked. I can't imagine how much torture that is for a child, that the only questions your parents is asking is, do you have homework and how did you do on the test? That's dehumanizing our children. So I want you to be asking questions. For example, be interested if they follow someone on TikTok or they follow someone on Instagram, they follow a sports player, they follow a singer, I don't care who it is. Be curious about why they follow certain people. Don't judge it. Don't judge it. Be curious about why they, what foods they prefer. Be curious about anything. Be curious about what they value. What do they want in life? What kinds of things would they like to have? What kind of friend would they love to have? And they may not be willing to share it with you all the time, but be curious about them. Your children are interesting. And what they feel from you, and I say this as a mom, because I know this from my kids, they feel judged by us. They feel judged by us. And so they don't want to answer our questions because they assume that we're asking something and then we're going to judge their answer. So we're setting them up. They feel set up by us. So we have to start asking, genuinely replace judgment with curiosity, because once you start asking with curiosity, I promise you they will share more. They're not going to share if they feel like their answer will be judged. But if you begin to open up and say, I'm curious about you and I'm curious about what you love and what makes you happy and what makes you joyful. And perhaps eventually when they trust you, they may also be able to share what they struggle with. But remember, they're not going to share that if they feel like your response is going to be what they did wrong. And that's what a lot of parents do, including myself. I'm being very honest, including me, is I became very critical. And then my son would say, well, Mom, why would I tell you anything? Because you just criticized what I just said. So it's really this curiosity thing in terms of helping our children grow and then providing opportunities, Henry.
I have a question, Dr.
Yeah,
Way.
Sophia, go. Yeah.
Why, just based on what you trying to tell the parents the correct way of doing things, why do you think people are so easily to judge people, like so easily judge people, but not curiosity to show?
I'll tell you exactly why. Because remember, in a modern culture, and I'm going to implicate China too in this, in a modern culture, when we value only the so-called hard side of ourselves and not the soft side, and we value academic achievement over kindness, that's a study at Harvard. 80% of parents said they valued academic achievement over kindness. I mean, Sophia, think about that, what that means. If you live in such a hard culture, it's hard to be a parent. It's hard to be a parent because what you're having to do is you're having to privilege things so your child will do well in life, that actually hurts your child. And so you're anxious. Parents do it. I speak as a mom. You do it because you're anxious for your child. You think they're not going to get into a good college. You think they're not going to do well in life. They're not going to get a good job. You're anxious for them because in a very hard culture where it's all yang and no yin, for those who know the reference, it makes it very hard to grow up. Because ultimately, all your social skills, all your soft skills are necessary to form relationships. So if we don't value them, right, it's hard to get where we want to go. So I would say to be sensitive to parents, because I think we're a group that suffers a lot. I think parents suffer a lot, is that we're having to raise our children in an antisocial culture when we too are social animals. Parents are social animals too. And we're trying to raise our children in an antisocial culture. So we're having to actually, our culture clashes with our nature for parents too. So for moms and dads, we're saying things to our children that we don't necessarily believe in. And that causes a lot of suffering on our part and anxiety and worries. And then we dump our worries on our children by judging them. We have to hear this. I took a long time to hear this as a mom. The problem with judgment is your children don't listen and they feel rejected. So the reason why it's curiosity to say, who are you? What can I learn from you as my child? And then hopefully you'll also be willing to learn from me as your mother or your father. Is the idea is challenge the antisocial culture that doesn't value curiosity, Sophia, to answer your question. It doesn't even value interpersonal curiosity. And Sophia, it's stunning to me. In the field of developmental psychology, I've been in this field for 40 years. We don't even study it. It's not even a topic. We study emotional regulation. We study emotion, right? We study all cognitive, cognition. We study all sorts of topics in developmental psychology. We don't even study the curiosity we naturally have about each other and looking at the patterns of it and how it changes over time. So we don't value it in an antisocial culture. So value it. Value the skills that we need to form connection. And then naturally you will be less judgmental. Because once you start listening with curiosity, you inherently become less judgmental. Because all of a sudden, Henry becomes a full person to you, not just a son that's not doing what you want him to do, but actually has a reason why he's not doing that. And you can actually have some sympathy that the reason I didn't do my homework is because my best friend called and he was suffering and I wanted to help him. And then you understand, right? I'm not saying that he still shouldn't do his homework, but I'm saying, but you understand it if you understand his perspective of why he didn't do his homework. Does that make sense, Henry, as a response?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Henry, do you have some, parents may asking, great, this waking up call, like emphasize telling the parents what's the correct way of communicating with a child on a daily basis. Do you have something like in line for parents to go to? How they connecting and continue strength like a muscle, right? We have to learn.
It is like a muscle. It is
muscle.
Very
we have to exercise.
Yeah.
We have to learn.
Yeah.
So do you have something for the parents to learn?
Yeah, so I think one thing that I'll suggest and sort of promote is Niobe's Listening with Curiosity project and this transformative interviewing method. I went through this when I was at NYU. My mom just went through it. Niobe's been teaching this to kind of the broader community, not just students.
Yeah.
I know she kind of previewed it, but it really trains you to learn how to listen and how to be more curious and how to support each other. And that was something that was really surprising for me, was just one of the things that this project does is just sit there and don't respond to someone and let them speak for 2 minutes, or it was a 3 minutes out. And that was just super powerful for me, because it was not actually an experience that I had in a while. I was like, okay, I'm actually listening to this person one-on-one, face-to-face, trying not to judge and trying to be curious. And so that method itself was really, really helpful for me. And so I think that's one thing that I would suggest. if you're very interested in sort of the research and science, like Niobe has written a lot of books and continues to. Yeah, I think fundamentally it is the one thing I like. It's just being more open-minded and curious, and listening to your child and having a conversation where you see them as an equal, is something that I know, is something that I wish we could promote more of.
Yeah, and I'm just reading some of the comments in the chat. So Henry, we had spoken about possibly offering workshops to this community. And I'm definitely interested in providing a series of workshops to parents. And quite frankly, I would love to also have workshops for your children. So we do workshops for adults and children, so teenagers in particular. So I would love to set up a series of workshops, Henry, for this community, because it's the best way to learn about it is to join a workshop. And Henry's mother can explain a bit what it entailed, but it's a hard skill. Sophia, the method is a metacognitive skill. It's learning how to think about thinking and try to understand someone else's experience. So it's a metacognitive skill. It's not just a social skill. It's a metacognitive skill. So it's actually, I would call it a fundamental skill for learning. And Henry, I would push back on one thing you said. I don't think it's about seeing your children as equal, because they're not equal in the sense of, they're your children. So you're raising them. But I do think it is equal in the sense that everybody has something to teach and everybody has something to learn. And I want you to approach your children in the same way. What can you teach me? And what can I teach you? And what can you learn from me, right? And what can I learn from you? And so if you think about in your life, the motto that I most hold dear to me in my life is everybody has something to teach and everybody has something to learn, regardless of your age, regardless of your age. So in that way, Henry, we are equal. You see what I'm saying? It's not, right? It's not actually just sort of equal. I get to control the household as a mother. But the reality is that I try to learn from my children as well as teach them things, right?
Right.
Yes.
Sorry, could I just reshare this last slide, Sophia?
Sure.
Okay, so this just has a QR code and I put the link in chat, just a little survey. And then if you're interested in more opportunities, feel free to fill that form out. And then my WeChat is here and my email is here.
Henry, would you do me a favor? Would you save the chat? Because I'd love to, I didn't get to read all the comments and I really love to read all the comments. So could you save the chat and send me the chat so I can read it after the thing?
Yeah, we can, and also the rest of the time, Henry, you can go through the chat box questions. You can read and give to Dr. Wei for her to answer it. At the same time, I wanted to emphasize there's a WeChat. Henry is in there, and also you can add Henry's WeChat group. If you wanted to have a further connection, further clarification, further study, further mastering, exercise your way of how to handling, especially boys, as a college application company CEO, we encounter boys, girls every single day, parents. I can see some of the healthy relationship. I also see some of the unhealthy relationship. If you want your child to go get a good education, going to a good school and dream school, actually mental health is really number one. This is directly helping your child to be mentally healthy, and then they can do better in schoolwork. I do see that. I do see the confidence. So that's the reason IvyCompass, we're hosting this kind of talk, is because truly we see if the boy high school student mentally confident, they really can kind of increase their ability of academic improvement. So yeah, you can add Henry's WeChat ID, and also you can go to our group. We can continue bring to you as a family class platform to give you more resource like this. Oh, good. Okay. Yeah. So Henry, do you want to read some of the questions? So that way, can you see through the question, or What do you like to do? Answer some of the question. And there's also MH, raise the hand. Yeah, you can raise your hand. I can also unmute you. And that way, you can also have conversation and have dialogue with Dr. Wei. Let me do that for you. Okay, hold on one second. Okay, I'm on mute. MH, you welcome to open up mic and then have a conversation directly with Dr. Wei and also Henry. Go ahead. MH. Okay, if it's not, Henry, go through the question and ask. Meanwhile, if anybody want to have a conversation, we can unmute them.
Yeah. Okay. Can you give some example questions, I guess from the like transformative interviewing method or listening project method?
So what it sort of has many levels. So first of all, we have to start from the place that people don't feel seen and listened to, and they feel stereotyped. And given that case, I'm going to answer your question, I promise, Henry. What we discovered in our research is that people have questions they wish people would ask that they don't ask. So the questions that we ask in our workshops are based on what people have taught us that they wish people would ask, that these questions. We ask about what questions do you wish your parents would ask you, your friends, your relatives, your teachers, your friends, etc. So in those questions, you get, in a study of 700 NYU students, we found that most students want to be asked questions. It's so simple. What do you care about? Why do you care about that? What do you value? What do you want in life? All these kinds of things that people are really hungry to be asked. And when you ask them why they want to be asked that, they always say the same thing. They say, to be seen as I see myself, to be seen as I see myself, meaning not to be stereotyped. So we ask those questions, we integrate those questions into our training. What do you fear the most in life and why? Who do you trust the most and why? Or who do you trust a lot? What type of friendship are you looking for and why? I mean, all those things that are basic things. We even have people interview each other about their first name. People have very strong feelings about their first names. There's many Chinese American students in my class that have two names, their Chinese name and their American name. They have feelings about both names and they never get asked about them. And so the idea is that we ask fundamental questions. Then the practice is more than just the question. The practice is really, there's 9 practices, but I'll give you an example of one of them. The classic is open-ended questions. We oftentimes ask a question and then we give them the answer. I'll give an example of that. If I were to ask Sophia about her relationship with her mother, rather than saying, or her relationship with her best friend or her son, rather than saying, tell me about your relationship with your son, I would say, are you close with your son? That's a close-ended question. And we oftentimes do that. We don't open up our questions. We make them so that I call it leading the witness, where we already give them the answer, right? So either you're yes or no, and that doesn't give you their experiences. It just says whether they're confirming or disconfirming your interpretation of what a relationship should entail. So the idea is open-ended questions is a very hard skill. It sounds like a simple skill. It's not a simple skill. And so my students and the adults in my training as well struggle with that one. To ask it genuinely curious rather than saying, do you feel this or that? How much do you feel this? That's all close-ended. It's not getting at someone's actual experience. To say, tell me about your relationship with your best friend, then you have to actually spend time with them saying, okay, tell me what you mean by that. And then what happened? And then how did that happen? And why do you think that happened? Right? Where you're getting into the details of it in terms of understanding the stories, right, that are associated with that experience. And that is when people feel listened to. Because all of a sudden, for the first time, they're telling stories they've never told, but that are fundamental to who they are and how they experience the world. And so you sometimes even get people who are being interviewed in this transformative method, they start to cry. Not because you're talking about something sad, but because they've never been listened to in that way. Where you're really wanting to know the details of their experiences. And sometimes it's their experience of joy. It's not necessarily an experience of sadness. It's an experience of happiness or love or trust. But nobody's ever been interested in the details. So it's getting those kinds of things in the transformative method that's so critical.
Totally true. Yeah, I just opened the mic for Lu Ying Chen. You can have a dialogue, please.
Oh, thank you. I cannot see myself, which is a little weird. But anyway, so I really appreciate this this work that you do. I teach at college, and so I have a lot of experiences with Asian American young men. And I have a teenager, and an adult son too. I really think it's really wonderful that the youth can be heard, like they feel heard when someone like you are interviewing them.
Yeah.
And I think the parents really do. I myself have been learning all these years. At the same time, I was wondering how much of this could be happening at the school curriculum level. At college, these young people, when I introduce Asian culture, readings to them, it's such a relief to them, and they feel affirmed, and they feel more connected with who they are, and they begin to connect with their parents.
Yeah.
Because not a lot of time, it's not us either. We are the victims too.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, basically, if it was happening at school, if the good things were happening in school, parents wouldn't struggle so much. So, right. So it's definitely not, I definitely don't blame the parents, but I think it has to be what I call it an adult effort. Adults of all, parents, teachers, bosses, mentors. It has to be seen. I'd like to frame it like this. Children and young adults are asking us something. They're asking us to care about what they care about, which is each other, right? And having meaningful relationships with adults and with their peers. They're asking us to value that. And they're asking us to be curious. Even if they're not curious, remember they were when they were 4. Remember your child when they were 4 and 5. That's who they were. And so sometimes with my students, when they're not asking any questions, it's so crazy. I go into a 4-year-old classroom and they all have their hand up. I go into a classroom of college students and nobody has their hand up. And I'll say, what happened to you? What happened to you? When you were 4, you had your hand up. What happened to you? And they're all so afraid. They think they're going to sound stupid. So they don't want to, and they think, students oftentimes find me intimidating. So, the reality is their fear is overcoming, they're fearful. So as parents, I think we absolutely need the help from the school to teach a curriculum that includes our children, definitely, but also to teach it in a way that encourages a curiosity about your Chinese culture, a curiosity about your Chinese parents. That fosters that. I mean, I'm always struck by how little curiosity my children have about who I am. It's just fascinating to me. They have no interest at this point. They're in their 20s. They have no interest in who I am, my culture, where I come from. They really have no interest. And I think that's a product of growing up in our culture. Why are our children not interested in who we are either? And so I do think it has to happen in school. It has to happen but I'd like to think of it as a collective of the adults taking this seriously, regardless if you're a parent or not a parent. And I'm going to add, can I answer that question about Chinese American girls?
Yeah.
Because I see it in the thing.
Yes.
So a lot of what I said is directly relevant for Chinese American girls. There's no difference in what I'm saying about the curiosity between all children, regardless of gender identity. This is the one difference. For boys, remember in our antisocial culture, being mature is just being self-sufficient. So that affects everybody. For our boys, it's also about being a man. So in terms of social emotional, our soft sides, that really has been feminized. So it's harder for boys and young men with the social emotional stuff than for girls. But every child suffers in an antisocial culture. Every child suffers. And how do I know Chinese American girls suffer? I have a lot of Chinese American young women in my classes at NYU. Do you know what the percentage of young women in my classes who have eating disorders? About 80% either have had an eating disorder or currently have an eating disorder. Girls are suffering too. They're just suffering. This is what I say. Boys are suffering louder because they're dying by suicide, and they're right. That's louder if you follow what I mean. But girls are suffering too. And so it really is about adults creating a pro-social culture that values what young people want and need to survive. And it's not about not valuing academic achievement. We have a very ambitious family. We're a very accomplished, extended family, et cetera. So I believe in good education and going to good schools, and I believe in all that. But I do think that we have to see it equally important to what young people want from us.
I totally agree. And also another factor is, I think girls, if you talk closely, you're holding hand, you go into the bathroom together, it's acceptable. But man, boy, you don't go to the bathroom together.
Exactly.
So any of the closeness, you show emotion, and that sign of a weakness is like you said, judgmental. For any boys, showing any closeness to any relationship, even the boy close to their mother or to their father, all seems sometimes be weird.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we have this thing about mama's boy. I mean, it's so that's an antisocial culture. Sophia, that is an antisocial culture. To pathologize the closeness between a mother and a son, that is a messed up culture. That's a messed up culture. Because no, I'm serious. Mothers should be valuing their close relationships with their sons. Sons eventually will value their close relationships with their mothers. Daughters should value their close relationship with their fathers. I mean, my point is that close relationships with your parents are a positive thing, regardless of their gender. And the fact that American culture in particular, that I think has been infiltrating China, is that we don't value mother-son relationships. We think there's something strange if a son is too close to his mother. That's a terrible belief. That's a terrible belief. Mothers help their sons have high quality relationships with women. Good relationships with mothers and sons helps our sons have good relationships with women. That's just a fact. Just a fact.
Yeah, good. Tina, I also unmute you. So Tina, you can open up your mic and have a conversation, please. Tina. Are you there, Tina? Tina L? You can speak. Okay, you can unmute yourself. I just unmute you.
In the chat,
Tina. Okay, otherwise Elaine. Elaine Zhang?
Yes, hi.
Hi. Go ahead.
Hi. Thank you, Sophie, and thank you, Dr. Wei and Henry, for all your, so helpful information and knowledge. So my son is a freshman in college, and he was born in China, but moved to the US at the age of 7, so grew up here. And I think I'm a pretty careful mom that when he was young, I was careful to, to try to create opportunities for him to play, not only to study, but I am not capable enough to find all those opportunities to play soccer or basketball, etc., because the school community is not so does not have so much opportunity for for the kids to play this, to join all this kind of after school classes or clubs. So my son now is doing very well academically, kind of a straight A's and very tall, 6.4. And what makes him feel frustrated once after a while, again, is that he told me that, look, it seems like I only study well, and I do not have other things to share with others. So, I feel so guilty. And I told him, I said, I am not capable enough to create so much opportunity for you when you are young. But I have a strong sense that you should have, those kind of a opportunity to play either soccer, basketball, whatever. So, how can I better support my son and let him don't feel that he is not worthy, or he is not as great as other boys in college?
Okay, Elaine Zhang, I want to say something to you, and I want you to listen to what I'm going to say. He is so fortunate to have you as a mother. What you just said to me brings tears to my eyes, because the deep love that he definitely felt in the way you describe him and the way you talked about mothering him. It's beautiful. He'll be fine. He has you as his mother. I understand the worry. I get it. My son also struggled. He struggled in all sorts of ways. He studies astrophysics, and he's sort of stereotypically science nerdish. And he also struggled. It's easy for us to blame ourselves, but ultimately, Elaine, it's very important to me that you hear this. It's very hard to mother in an antisocial culture. You're doing the best you can, and it sounds like you've raised a very sensitive, mature young man who's aware of his, of what he struggles with, and he shares it with you, which is fantastic. So I would say you're doing the best you can. At this point, he's in college. He's going to figure it out himself. He will. He doesn't need your help at this point in terms of finding friends and finding connections. He will figure it out. But you have to have faith that he loves himself, because there's no way he would have shared that with you. And there's no way he would have grown up not loving himself with a mother like you. And I'm saying that because the way you describe what you did is so sensitive and so careful. And so I don't want you to have any regrets in the way you raised him. He's suffering because we're living in an antisocial culture, and you're blaming yourself because we live in an antisocial culture. Do you hear what I'm saying, Elaine?
Yes, I do. Thank you so much, Wei. You gave me a lot of, Dr. Wei, you gave me a lot of confidence, and feeling much better now.
Good.
Thank
you. Good. I'm glad to hear it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Wei. There's two more raised hand. I want to give them a chance, because and also, just in case tonight we're not going to finish answer all the questions. Either add Henry's WeChat. Also scan the barcode here. We will bring you to a group, and I promise you, I will bring Dr. Wei into that group. We can continue learning. Okay.
Yeah, good. Yeah,
so
that
Lou,
sounds great. That sounds wonderful. Yeah.
Yes. And Lou, next, you can talk now, Lou Zhang.
Yeah, thank you, Sophia, and thank you, Dr. Wei. Thank you, Henry, for the excellent presentation. I wish my son can listen to the recording, so that's why I'm asking, for you guys to share the link to the recordings. I do have a question. I think you really hit the issue on the point. You mentioned about, Dr. Wei, you mentioned about like stereotypes, right? So for Asian boys, Asian American or Chinese American boys, they are perceived to be excellent, kind of like the super minority, right? Excellent in academics, but not so much fun socially. So I think, at home, my son is very fun and he's multi-talented, but it's not easy for the stranger to the public, right? For the public to see it, especially for like teachers who doesn't know him very well, or like some other opportunities. For example, if he's interviewing for an internship, things like that. So what is your advice for Asian boys or Chinese American boys to learn how to project confidence, how to really talk to strangers?
No, it's a great question for me. I would say, and this is going to sound like a funny answer, but I really believe it. Encourage his curiosity in other people, because oftentimes questions communicate confidence, meaning to be confident in what you don't know about something or someone else gets interpreted actually as confidence, that you have the courage to ask. So I would encourage his curiosity, not just in the topic and he's being interviewed about, right, whatever it is, but also about if it's appropriate, obviously if it's appropriate. about, another person's experiences, or, I remember a boy who struggled socially when we were teaching him the method and different questions to ask and then follow-up questions. He looked at me and he said, "You mean I could use these questions and what I'm learning to like talk to my roommate?" And I was like, "Oh yeah." I said, "You can do this with your roommate. You could do this with anyone." And he's like, oh, great. I mean, he didn't get that. And then he got it, that curiosity is the way you connect to people. And it also communicates. It sounds funny. I think if you understand what I'm saying, it sounds funny to say curiosity suggests confidence, but it really does. That it's not about how much you know, but it's actually your confidence to not know and to say, what can I learn from you? And I think that might help your son connect to other people, because everybody likes to be asked a question. Everybody likes that. Yes. Right? And there's even a study by a professor at Harvard, actually, that shows the more you ask follow-up questions, the more the other person likes you.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you. That makes sense.
I encourage that as a strategy.
Totally.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thank you, Lou. Next one is for Wong. You have your email, WONG. You can talk now. Can you unmute yourself?
Okay.
Go ahead.
Hi. Thank you for the for everyone's opinion, and also I might not hear the whole seminar, but I get some good information about the Asian boys, that they have some problems they are facing, and also challenges. I want to know, I have a question regarding my close friends. Her son has a problem with substance abuse. And it's really hard for her to find a way to figure out how to handle this with her son. So it seems like they have a stable, financially stable, and they have everything looks like good, but we just don't know why her son will, indulge into this substance abuse, and how to figure it out. I want to know, and also what she can do, or her family can do to solve this problem.
Yeah. Well, remember, so first of all, I'm not a clinical psychologist, so I don't sort of deal with treating people who are suffering in that way. I'm a developmental psychologist, simply saying what my research shows on social emotional development and the predictors of various things that are social emotional. But what I can say is substance use, just like loneliness, just like depression and anxiety, are almost always rooted in a poor social health that leads to basically negative behavior. So thinking about someone who's suffering, whether it's in whatever form, is helping them form connections with other people in different, right? Mentors, Henry mentioned mentors, coaches, other peers, other, cousins. It doesn't have to be non-familiar. It could be, their cousins. But the idea is helping them be in community with other people, because substance use, just like a lot of bad behavior, is predicted by isolation, loneliness, depression, anxiety. And that the predictor of those things are almost always a crisis of connection, a disconnection from the self and others. So I would say trying to focusing on his connections, helping him have supportive networks. Henry referred to a lot of this. And I think it's just so important. And I'm sorry to hear about your friend's son. It sounds very, very painful. And I don't, I wish I could be a little bit more helpful, but I would say focus on his social health and his mental health, not just his mental health. So pay attention to the social health too.
Okay, thank you. Thanks.
Yeah, Wang, you can add either scan the barcode on here, you go into the group, that way you can connect with Henry.
Sophia, can I answer this last question?
Yes, please.
Okay, because I really want to get this last question. It's Lucia Lee.
Yeah.
Okay, I get this question all the time. I'm going to read it because it's so good. Thank you, Dr. Way, for the talk. Could you explain why my teenage boy doesn't generally share information with us? He has no problem making friends at school. Okay, I get this all the time. I'm teasing all the parents in the room, including myself. We have to stop wanting them to share information with us. They just don't want to do it. You know, some of our children do, some of our children don't. My son never shared information with me. What you have to do is focus on, does your son have people he does share? And it sounds like he does. He has no problem making friends at school. So he's good to go. He's good to go. And I think we as parents, I certainly as a mom, I want to know the information. But until they're in their mid-20s, late 20s, I think sometimes, they just, many times, my son just has no interest in sharing. Yeah, for all the parents, just to give a little smile on your faces, this is the conversation. He's a doctoral student at UVA, University of Virginia. And this is the phone calls. He's 24. Hi, Raphael, how are you? What's happening? Oh, it's all great, Mom. It's all great. It's all good. Well, tell me what's happening with your classes. Do you like your classes? Yeah, love them, Mom. Yep, love them. All good, Mom. All good. I really got to go. And you can, I assume there are parents in the group that relate to that. It's just, you know, he's a healthy kid. He just doesn't want to share with his mom. It's okay. Do you follow? Yeah, exactly. Sounds so familiar, someone said. So I just think we have to let it go. As long as we're valuing what they want us to value, right? As long as we're not judging them, and then we can actually raise healthier children and be healthier ourselves too. Don't put so much pressure on you. You're all doing the best job you can. I do feel that parents don't hear that enough. We're all doing the best we can. I hope tonight was helpful. Thank you, Sophia, and thank you, Henry, for hosting this. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you very, very much. Obviously, there's a lot more questions. There's a lot more to talk about. You know, 2 hours just not enough, but you know, we have to end somehow. But thank you very, very much, Dr. Way.
Good.
And thank you, Henry, for hosting. Yeah.
And could you save the chat so then I'll look through it later. So yes. I got everybody. Okay, good. Okay, thank you, everybody.
Yeah, we record everything. And before we finish, I wanted to also make sure if you wanted to have a more conversation on this, and obviously, like I said, it's exercise. It's something to bring the awareness to our brain. And also, like, you know, Dr. Way said, we're an adult. We need to take initiative change. You don't change other people, you change ourselves first. So always getting more education, getting more awareness, getting more alert to us as a parent. We change, then the kids will change. And sometimes they don't change, it's okay too. Yeah, we accept, right? We accept who the way they want to. But if you want to continue with us, you can scan the barcode on the left-hand side. That way you can go into a WeChat group. We will continue to discuss similar subject like this. And also, if you are not knowing the IvyCompass, we do a lot of college application. We help you kids in the high school period of time to have a smooth transaction. Also, like I indicated in the beginning, we're hoping give them more strength, give them more confidence, give them more tools to help them be, you know, mentally stability kind of thing. And also we're connecting with the parents to helping along the way as well. So thank you again for Dr. Way for tonight's time and wisdom and wonderful research, wonderful finding to helping all generation, obviously also helping the, you know, teenager boys. And also thank you, Henry, for use your personal as Asian boys, be a such academic achiever, but at the same time also experience some of the loneliness, some of the awkwardness, and bring up yourself in front of public and let everybody know you can have a voice, you can have some healthy dialogue to make yourself feel whole person. So I learned a lot, and I looking forward to continue have that series of conversation with you, Dr. Way, and hopefully we can welcome you to our platform once again for, you know, area. I'm sure you have a lot to share. So thanks again for tonight's time. Thank you. Thank you, everybody.